In this video, I'll review my Yeti 65 cooler and let you know whether or not I think Yeti coolers are worth the money. So I bought my Yeti cooler about 3.5 years ago when I was planning to do a trip to Cape Lookout in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Up until that point, I've been using a Coleman cooler that I borrowed from my father, just a cheap one. It was doing great. It'd keep it ice for a day or two. If I was camping for more than a few days, normally I was in a situation where I was driving around during the day doing hikes or going out to see a waterfall or something, and then I would be able to stop by the gas station and refill the ice in the cooler. However, when I started really planning to spend 5 days in the Outer Banks on Cape Lookout, I realized that that cooler wasn't going to meet my needs. So that's when I started looking at a Yeti cooler, knowing that it would be able to hold ice for 5 days. And it performed great. I had no issues keeping my food safe the entire time we were out there. We went out there in July, which is probably one of the hottest times that you can go out to Cape Lookout, and I had no issues at all using the cooler and keeping everything good. And I had ice the whole time. The Yeti cooler is made with roto-molded plastic, which kind of makes like a one-piece plastic. There's 2 inches of insulation on the sides, 3 inches up here on top. Inside that plastic, they put a foam in there. And when you couple that with these tight sealing lids that have a freezer grade gasket all the way around here, you end up with that high performance. That's how these coolers are able to keep ice for days longer than your traditional older Coleman or other brand style coolers. My cooler in particular has been used as a step, thrown around the back of the truck. Multiple people sit on it at once. And it's extremely tough. It holds up great to all of that. It's nice being able to have a piece of storage that can be used for other things like a table. Something I would never be able to do with that cheaper Coleman cooler that I used to use. If you can afford to buy one of these Yeti coolers now, you can think of it as a once-in-a-lifetime investment because of how durable they are. For the price of a few cheaper coolers, you can get the performance of this more expensive cooler, high-end cooler, and you also have less material waste over the course of your life. That's not to say that if all you can afford is a cheaper cooler like a Coleman, that can certainly get the job done in most instances. It did for me. You just have to refill ice more often, so there's less upfront cost, but if you think about how heavy of a user you are, you're buying less ice can actually end up helping this cooler pay for itself. In addition, you got to think about, depending upon what type of trips you're doing with your cooler, how often do you want to be coming back to refill ice. These will do better overall if you pack them up. So if you have cool stuff that's already been cooled down, you already cooled your drinks down in your fridge, everything's already at the temperature, below the temperature that you're going to want it at during your trip before you put it in here. And then you chock full it up with ice. You can even do what I do. I'll freeze a gallon of water or half-liter soda bottle full of water in my freezer at home, put it in here. Those solid blocks of ice will keep the cooler as a whole cooler and keep ice longer over time for a longer trip. You also want to look at trying to keep this thing in the shade, and if you can, you definitely want to limit how often you open that lid. If you keep the lid open all the time, like if you're using it like a barbecue and people are going in for juice boxes and beers all day long, then if it's open, all that technology that keeps ice cool is out the door. So if you're using this for a long-term ice solution, you really have to have a little bit of strategy in mind with how often you're going to open and close it, what you're going to put in there, and how you're going to keep it packed. If you leave dead space in there, it isn't as efficient as keeping that ice for longer periods of time. In the end, I definitely can recommend using one of these Yeti coolers. This one served me well. I've done a number of long weekends, the 5-day trips out to the Outer Banks, and then I even used this cooler as my primary means for keeping my food safe when I was on a 14-day road trip across the country a year or two ago. Nowadays, I use a cheap 12-volt Chinese fridge I bought off of Amazon in my truck camper, but I still bring this cooler because I'll need extra room for drinks. I use it as a step. I use it as dry storage. It's just extremely useful to have. And even more importantly, I use this in my boat, and it's great for keeping freshly caught fish fresh. If you found this video useful, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more camping, hunting, and fishing content. An affiliate link for this cooler will be down in the description below if you want to check it out.